Hey everyone, we are back. We're here with Casey, my brother. He is the second oldest of the family of 5 brothers that I'm a part of. Maybe you'll get a chance to hear from more of them. Very exciting. Also here with Joey, and we have gotten a great glimpse into the mind of Casey here in the first episode as we jumped into some of the major pillars as to why he believes in Christianity and specifically in the person of Jesus. So you'll have to take a listen to that to get up to speed, but we're going to take it in a different direction this time into more of the personal journey that Casey's been through of faith. So Case, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Joey, thank you for coming back from your potty break.
Always.
Always.
Cool. So Case, could you describe what faith looked like for you when you were younger? What was the background that you were raised with in faith, or even just your earliest impressions of Jesus, Christianity, spirituality? Walk us through some of the earliest moments.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have to dig deep for that.
You don't have to go crazy early, but just some of the formative first impressions that you had within Christianity.
Yeah, I daily life, and that really was how they conquered trials and how they overcame struggles was through reference to a higher power. And that's all I've ever known. So I don't know what it would feel like. That's kind of the hard part about being alive, is you see things from one vantage point, but I don't know how it would feel to have parents that didn't reach out for help to something beyond the earthly plane. But I know that really informed me to see that, and to see that was power that could be accessed. I remember early on, some of my earliest memories were like struggling with theology and like questions of like damnation and stuff like that, and just being really broken that, according to my parents, that some people were going to be separated from other portions of humanity and from God. And that was, I remember like being awake at night crying about that, and mom coming in and comforting me. I was like 5 or 6, and like it just so disturbed me. I think one atheist said it's like child abuse to teach them that. But it was disturbing, and it was like so it's theology, and like the question of like what is true, what is like the hard realities of what we believe has always been something that I've struggled with and has been a part of my journey. And the implications of things. So that was like 5 years old, and that's carried through till now. So I would say that that's like the earliest things, like seeing that mom and dad relied on this thing. It was like this thing, they relied on it to get through hard things. And that was just really, I was, as an impressionable kid, that really made a huge impact.
Okay, and so then walk me then through as you started to figure out who you were as a young adult, which probably also implied who you were as a thinker, and things that you agreed with and disagreed with how we, might have been raised, or just the environment that we were around. So now we're moving into high schoolish and moving into college. As you started to find your own path, what did that look like?
Well, I think the major thing everyone goes through is balancing or weighing the benefits of being a Christian, because it requires that you if you're genuine, if you don't care about being true to yourself, then what does anything matter? But if you like care about actually being genuine to yourself, you can't be a Christian and also pursue all the pleasures of the world. And so everyone struggles with how much am I really willing to give up of the pleasures of the world, because they're very pleasurable, and and like, you know, and everybody can reach out and grasp a different amount of the pleasures of the world. So much power, so much fame, so much fortune, so much women, so much, sex and just everything. Not everyone has the same capacity, but they have a capacity, right? There's a certain amount they could reach out and grasp if they wanted it.
To want more than what they currently have or something.
Right, but even just want your own potential. But Christianity doesn't even allow you your own potential in those areas. It oftentimes says, no, like even like, let's say something like polyamory versus like monogamy. That's a sacrifice. Like you're making a sacrifice at that point. If you're going to say like polyamory is like the wish fulfillment of the modern day, right?
To have multiple partners, kind of have.
And just have it work, have it be good, have everyone cool with it, have a culture that gives you the big old thumbs up. Well, Christianity gives you the big old thumbs down. And you have to say to yourself, like, I like polyamory. I'm polyamorous in my heart. Like I would like that. Just to be real honest, like that sounds cool to me. Mm-hmm. It's just that I can't do that and also be a Christian because I wouldn't be genuine. I wouldn't be a genuine Christian, which unfortunately for me, being a genuine person is important. I'm not always genuine because I fall short, but that's my goal. And my goal is to be genuine, and which means I have to let go of some of these things I really want. And do I think I could, manage loving multiple women like Solomon did and making it kind of work? I think I maybe could. I don't know. It's just that Christianity gives me the thumbs down. And so I have to decide which do I want. And so high school and college, I would say, were times when like that was the battle was there and I wasn't sure who was winning. And I was like losing sight of my own being genuine to myself. And that's the thing is like genuineness is something, again, you hold for yourself. People can judge the exterior and you can look all put together. But when you go to sleep at night, you have to deal with who you are to yourself. And if I can't believe that, like that will lead to like ending your life if you can't be true to yourself. And I wasn't being true to myself. So that was like the struggle where I was like, if I'm true to myself, I either have to be a Christian or give that up and just totally jump into the world and be like, all right, let's do this. And so that was I would say that was like the struggle time for that.
That's good. I can totally relate to that. And I like how you articulated it. But yeah, it was this feeling of I'm totally trying to do both things and I can't. I'm doing the whole like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I've got feet on two sides of this fence. And it produces all sorts of like, just feeling of like, I'm not consistent. I'm not who I want to be. Yet I still want this thing and I want this thing. And so it's like, I needed to ultimately choose.
Inauthentic is what I would say it was. It was inauthentic and something to be not looked back on with pride, with shame maybe. It's like, it's not the things that I'm ashamed of. This is the key point. I'm not ashamed of pursuing worldly lust. I'm ashamed of pretending like I was a Christian at the same time. Yeah. And like, the thing is like, I just wish I had maybe just been like, I'm not a Christian. I'm just doing the secular thing. And I would not be ashamed of anything I did because it's all natural. They're all natural things and they're actually good things in a natural sense but it's just that you shouldn't claim to be something you're not. That's the thing that I would say I would be ashamed of. But I am also not ashamed because everybody goes through it. So nobody's better than me. So, I won't flip anyone off, but it's like, look, I'm not a great person, but I also don't think anyone's all that much better. So.
Right. It's a stage that I think a lot of people, go through. Joey, it looked like you had a thought.
Oh, I totally had a thought because we had this conversation in a previous episode. I feel like with Douglas, that it was all based on morals, but the way you say it, it's not necessarily morals. It's more like who do you want to be as a person, and decide to act upon that through either being judged or maybe even feeling shame towards it, and not necessarily because it's the right thing to do, which is fascinating.
Yep.
Wait, Joy, explain that just a little bit more. So,
So if you act because of morals, it's in your belief that it's the right thing to do. If you do it because you feel like you might be shamed, it's because society tells you to do something because they want you to do it. And I feel like there's the huge difference between that. Because the funny thing because I'm not a Christian, but at the same time, it's in my belief system that I'm doing the right thing to be with one partner, to not try to cheat on them, to do certain things a certain way, but still do certain pleasures up till a limit. So that's morals. It's not because society says it's right or wrong. They do, but I don't really give a damn.
yeah.
Right.
In case it seems like you're saying, because I think this is maybe a misperception then. People often think that Christians have just this set of rules or morals, kind of like what you were saying, Joey, or like our boundaries or little guardrails for our behavior. And it's like, well, yeah, no sex before marriage, or and these are the things that we don't, and only one partner, and marriage bed is between a man and a woman. But then ultimately you're kind of saying, you're taking it a step forward. You're like, those might be the symptoms of what Christianity is, because what Christianity is saying God chooses everything I do. And if I'm going to call myself a Christian, I live by by him, by what he says, versus just these rules.
I guess I'm trying to put it in a better way than I did. I think I put it confusingly maybe, but it's just that I don't see these things as necessarily evil or bad. It's just I'm trying to think of a parallel. It's just that you're claiming to be a part of a group that has these boundaries, but you're not living within those boundaries. Yeah. I'm not claiming one is better than the other. It's just you shouldn't claim to be in this group if you're not following their precepts. So for me, I was like, the inauthenticity of it was a problem for me. You shouldn't claim to be a role model for healthy living if you're not living healthy, or not even healthy living, but just
that's a good example. I'm trying to think of
something doesn't have a moral component to it, but you're just you're claiming to be this thing. You should be authentic to that.
What'd you think?
Oh no, that's a perfect example, because a friend of mine and she and I talked about this on Instagram. There's a lot of people that advocate being confident and being healthy, but there are these really huge women, literally, let's not talk around it, just fat women being but I'm confident, so this is a good thing. And I feel like it's a good example, because you cannot be this is a good thing while it's a bad thing.
Right.
Yeah. So to be part of a group, you need to be not 100% like the group, but follow their basic steps. I feel like that's it.
Okay, so Case, you might have even already been going into this, but was there a period of doubt in that chunk, college-ish, where you had genuine thoughts of, I don't want to be a Christian anymore?
Not doubt in the truth of Christianity, but doubt whether I really felt like it was worthwhile. Or whether it was worthwhile in the moment. I was maybe I can just kind of put off being a good Christian and then pick it up later.
I'm so sorry. This is so funny, because I just imagine being in college and you just standing there in a room, and suddenly a typical college orgy breaks out, and you're like, am I still a Christian at this moment? Yeah. and do I really want to be like this?
I'd say that's probably a good analogy. It's just all the things were offered, and so I would say that looking back on that time is a time where I'm like, a lot of time I don't think I was authentic, and that is what eventually destroyed me on the inside, where I was just like, I don't like that feeling. I love the feeling of pursuing worldly things. I'm never ashamed of that. It's just, by the way, to everybody, I'm not ashamed of anything I've done on that score. The one thing I'm ashamed of is saying that I was something and not being that. So as far as like all my relationships, all of the choices I've made, I'm not ashamed. I'm human. Like they're human things to do. I lived a human experience. I'll leave it up to other weak people to be ashamed. I'm not ashamed, and I don't apologize for anything. But I am broken inside that I'm not authentic because I've lost something. I could care less what other people think. I've lost something of my own identity by being inauthentic. And so I'm trying to regain that, trying to build towards that.
So then what was the catalyst case then to as you say, either come back to kind of like a full conviction or a full, this is what I want to be? Or was it, what was kind of like the turning point there what was the point that you decided I'm not going to pursue worldly pleasures anymore and so call myself a Christian and actually kind of forsake those for my Christianity?
Well, I think probably the tipping point for myself, and I would guess a lot of people, is when you end up hurting people and your decisions ultimately have real world ramifications. That's when you're like, your inauthenticity, your lack of genuineness is suddenly thrust in your face like a mirror, and the image that you behold is very disturbing. And so I think none of these things would even be that hurtful if you had just been authentic. Like, I have friends who are like, dude, I just love sleeping around. It's just who I am. It's what I do. I don't have any beliefs outside of that. And I'm like, they're being authentic to who they are. Like that's who they are at that moment. That's who they are. They're not claiming to be anything else. They're being authentic. I was not. And the image of that was so distorted and broken that I was like, that's gross. I don't want to be that.
So would you have any thoughts to the one style of life is better than the other?
No, I mean, the secular life is way better. It's way more enjoyable. It lacks stuff on a certain plane. It's way better. So was it Epicurus who said pleasure is one of the greatest pursuits, right? There's power, there's fame, there's fortune, there's honor. Not like there's a couple of, but like being honored by people, being thought dignified, right? And then there's pleasure. Well, all of these service the mind, right? But Epicurus, I think it was him, said pleasure is the one that serves the body. You can gain pleasure through the other means, but pleasure is the one that actually serves the body. The others are all in the mind. They're metaphysical almost. So my point is just, those are all pretty great on the earthly plane, living on earth. It's just the definition of wisdom, a lot of people say, is being able to play the long game, being able to, what do they say? You're able to put off present desires for long-term goals. That's like the definition of actually growing up, like actually becoming wiser, is like able to say no to something immediately so that you can gain something bigger in the future. So wisdom would preclude going after all your desires, but yes, of course, that's what makes life on this world great. Even Paul says as much. He says, we're all fools. If we're wrong, we should just be eating and drinking and making merry. So if our faith is in vain.
But it's actually kind of funny because I wager that it really also depends on the person, because I know people from both sides right now, and I feel like as long as you look back at the end of your life without regret, without hurting people, no matter which choice you made, like fully living to with drugs, sex, and rock and roll, or through God and just following certain footsteps. If you look back and you didn't hurt anyone else, and you are happy, that's the greatest thing. It's
if
just,
you were happy.
If you're happy, yes.
Right.
Because that's the key point. If you're unhappy and you have a life full of regrets, you made the wrong choice. I know a couple of people that a friend of ours that has been on the show, Arena. She was very open about it. She does not want to have kids, no matter what happens, and she will get to the point that she either keeps this up, which I believe she will, or that she gets to an age that she regrets it, for example. And I feel like that's a great example because a lot of people live that lifestyle of sleeping around, doing whatever because they don't want to have kids. And then they go through that threshold of being able to get kids, and then they feel regret. And I feel that's the moment you either made the wrong or right choice.
And if you feel regret, I feel like it wasn't that you pursued worldly things like pleasure and power. It's just that you did it poorly. Like you sucked at it. Like you should have done it better. Like if you want to be polyamorous and then you later are like, oh, it ended up with so much drama. Well, you did it wrong. You sucked at it. Like I bet there's a way to do polyamory. Animals do polyamory all the time. It seems to work out. The bonobo chimps, go look it up. But like it's they do it just fine. It's possible. It's just if you aren't able to do it, that doesn't say anything about the value of pleasure or the value of power. It just means you did it wrong.
Okay, so I'm wondering if I'm mishearing you though. I guess I come from a presupposition or just a perception in my mind that truly just like going after pleasure is going to run itself out, that it's inevitable that you're going to hurt people or get hurt. Do you not share that?
No, it's just if you do it wrong. I think there's ways to live a satisfying life here on earth to a point, right? Satisfying to a point outside of Christianity. I mean, like you can, like, there's a lot of people listening to this aren't Christians. They're like, I'm quite satisfied with my life. I'm doing all right. And I would say, I believe you. I think you're living I bet you're living a satisfying life. You're probably playing your cards right. And cool. It's just, it's not a long enough game for me. I think it lacks a little wisdom as far as the temporal world is all that you have placed importance on. I think that's missing the ball. I think you're actually, that's actually not accurately understanding reality, and that will have repercussions. But as far as if this world was all there was,
right,
then I think there's a way to do it satisfyingly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think I see what you're saying. Okay. Joe, do you have a thought on that?
No, I think it's really hilarious because I feel like you're kind of not even kind of, I feel like you're the opposite. I feel like you're totally like, I am with Brianna, I will stay with Brianna, no need for anyone else to be there to fuel that relationship and that type of love. And Casey said he's obviously happy with his wife, but still, if there was a way to make it work and she was all right with it, he wouldn't necessarily say no to someone else as an extra partner, not as a replacement.
Right.
Which is totally
is that what you're saying, Case?
I'm saying there's a part of me that's gregarious, that the desire is there for like King Solomon's like harem of concubines. But I would say in any man who has like any slight gregarious side of him.
What's gregarious mean? I don't know that word.
Just, I don't know if I can put a great definition to it, but I would just say very, hungry for the worldly pleasures. I would say that desire is there, and that monogamy is a sacrifice, and it's a sacrifice I'm very excited to make. And there are things that you get from monogamy that you couldn't have otherwise. I believe that, but there are also things that you're missing out on in monogamy. So it's a trade-off. But my point is that yes, Christianity does preclude things that are, I think, kind of good in some sense. Not good morally, I'm just saying good in some sense.
Okay.
I totally called you out, Scott, because you definitely weren't paying attention, because I was like totally on top of this.
No, I'm with it. I think, Case, I think you're making a weird point. It's a weird point for me. I see what you're trying to say, and I'm with you. Of course, there's a part of me that would also love polyamory. I love my college days. Would love the memory of them. Would love to be back in them. But you like maybe balance us out a little bit. We've really weighed the scales and saying, hey, y'all, hedonism is not only viable but far superior. Maybe give us a picture as to why, because I feel like Joey's like, yeah, Casey's got a side piece, but you don't.
No, I
You don't have a side piece, and so can you weigh this out as to why submitting to God or monogamy or is a good choice? Or
the reason I bring all this up, Scott, is because of authenticity. Like, it would be inauthentic of me to say, and I know there's so many men listening who are like, hey, I have these desires in me, and it is a decision, a sacrifice I'm making to pursue Christ, to let go of these things that I could otherwise pursue. And I just want to say, like, to those guys, which I think is almost all guys, yeah, I mean, that's there. And there's different but equal sacrifices that women make to pursue a life of pursuing Christ. And the thing isn't like suddenly you realize all those things were evil. It's actually that they're good. Sacrifice is not a sacrifice if what you're sacrificing has no value. Right. Those things have value. And that's my point.
And I do think Christians play this game of they want to like bash their old life so that they feel like they're not sacrificing things in the present, which what you're saying is like, no, those are sacrifices. And you don't need to be like, wow, these people that do these things when you were the one that did it, they're like so evil. And, but more a more honest portrayal of like, hey, these are the options you can do in life, but here is, and you're sacrificing something to choose this, but here's why it's ultimately superior. So that's the thing I want to hear from you is why is Christ like why choose Christ then? Right.
Well, so for example, like think of the vision quest. This is common to a lot of religions, like even Native Americans in the region of Colorado and elsewhere would go on vision quests. But Christ himself went on a vision quest into the desert, right? The whole point is that you fast, that you are exposed to the elements, that you go up to some high place, and you do all these things which are uncomfortable. Think about it, like, what animal just does this? Animals have polyamory. Animals have all these things that they do, pleasures that they seek out, power, all these things. But who seeks out vision quests? Humans, in a religious context, seek out a vision quest. And it always has to do with letting go, sacrificing the pleasures of the world and accepting asceticism for a short time, or maybe a longer time, but asceticism, you're actually giving up things. Why? Because you actually believe that there's something beyond those pleasures that you can attain, that you can access. If you didn't think that, you wouldn't do it. It would be stupidity, it would be foolishness. But if it is there, then it's wisdom. And that's what Christianity is. It's the ultimate form of that. When it's practiced authentically, it is a form of asceticism where you're seeking the divine by sacrificing temporal things.
That's the definition of asceticism, denying the body for some greater thing.
I mean, it's a form of like removing things from yourself, whatever it may be, maybe food, maybe shelter, something so that you can access something beyond this world.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. All right.
You wanted fire, so I thought, hey, Scott's not paying attention. We can bring some fire into this.
Pay attention. Pay attention. Trying to figure out what Casey's trying to say. So, okay, Case. So now walk us through your interaction with the church, God's body. body of believers here on this earth. So kind of post-college and into, current adulthood. But what's been your journey with understanding the importance of the church and which one to be a part of?
Yeah. So, like I said, theology has always been important to me because that's just a fancy word for like reality. What is real is important to me. And when it comes to spiritual things, they just call that theology, but that's just the trying to understand what's real. Well, I've had a journey through what I think is real. And I would say that I don't map perfectly over my parents, over my brothers on certain topics, on certain things. But what ultimately happened was Protestantism as a whole no longer mapped for me over what I understood to be reality.
Wait, pause real quick, just because I'm curious that as you do this, that Joey's tracking too, because it might be, we have, hopefully non-Christian, Christian audience. So Joey, when we throw out terms like Protestantism, do you have like a frame of reference for that?
No, but I'm also the type of person that's fully like, I'm gonna Google this afterwards and just make sense of what's being told.
There's a lot of things to Google after these two episodes.
These episodes, the show notes will contain all the extra information. Good luck, Scott.
Okay, so do it in a way that, so explain Protestantism.
So Protestantism is basically the idea that you can access the truth of Christ, of his word, without reference to an institution on earth. And so I agree that we're all priests, that we're all equally able to access a relationship with Christ. But I disagree that on your own, on an island, even with some other people, you can protect the truth of what Christianity says. The reason I started doubting that was when I was, I guess, in college, the church I was going to started preaching things that I felt very strongly were not the truth of reality. And that really disturbed me because I respected the people at that church, I respected the pastor. But then I realized, I was like, but how do I know that they're wrong and I'm right? How do I know that I'm not wrong and they're right? And with Protestantism, the issue is there's actually no way to answer that question. It's actually impossible. There's no way to know. You can just be like, well, I have a strong conviction. Well, they could just say the same thing. And then you just square off, I suppose, and you go your separate ways. And that's exactly what happens in Protestantism. It just fractures into lots of different denominations that say, this is reality. This is reality.
Yeah. And pause real quick, Case. So yeah, Joey and others, Martin Luther is probably a name that maybe you've heard. He was the first person to translate the Bible from Latin into a common language. Yeah, know all about him. So he started this huge reformation, this huge change within Christian church, because before there was the Pope, and the Pope was the church, the Catholic Church, and anyone who called themselves a Christian was a part of that church. Don't mind the wee sound outside. But then through Martin Luther, it was, we're going to make the Bible accessible to the common people in their common language so that they can read it. They don't need a priest to read it. So then they can come to their own conclusions. And so some amazing things came out of that. Individual faith, this idea of Jesus as our Savior, not a priest as our Savior. The church can't sell forgiveness, things like that. People like John Calvin came out of this, which is huge for our Dutch audience here. John Calvin had a huge impact on Calvinism that's seen here in the Netherlands. But also like what Casey's saying, and you see this a lot in America, and probably elsewhere, but there can be this fractioning aspect where it's like we're a Southern Baptist church, but we don't really like the Southern Baptist convention denomination. So we're going to create our own little pocket. So then they're like, well, we're going to make a church, and then it can just kind of keep happening kind of thing. That's what you're talking about, Case.
Yeah, just that everyone gets the right to interpret what the Bible means, right? The Bible's comprised of words, but the meaning sits above it, and you're trying to access the meaning of what the intent of the writer was through the words, right? And what people say in Protestantism is everyone has the ability to do that. Well, how can that be true if they're all saying different things? Obviously, someone's getting it wrong. And that was what kind of that's kind of what stabbed the bubble, and it went pop for Casey. And I was like, oh, this is stupid. So then I went on a journey. I was like, the concept of the church suddenly just dissolved. I was like, I don't care about this concept anymore. It seems stupid to me. And I was like, there is no such thing as the church. And so then I went on a journey of seeing if there really was something that I could call the church. And that's what eventually led me to Orthodoxy. So do you want me to get into that, or?
Yeah. Explain Orthodoxy.
Okay. So initially I went to Catholicism, because Catholicism says, no, there's not lots of different truths. Not everyone gets to interpret it for themselves. A truth is established by the church. And it's not established by individuals just reading the Bible and coming up with their own interpretation. And I like that. However, my problem with Catholicism was it still placed interpretation in the hands of one man, the Pope. And the Catholic Church has a reputation for changing their views on truth. So it was the same thing. It was one Pope disagreeing with previous popes as to what reality was. And I was like, again, bubble popped, stupid. I don't care to be a part of that. So then I was like, all right, I got to do some research in church history. And that's when I discovered, that the Catholic Church had emerged actually out of the Orthodox Church. That the Catholic Pope was at one time just a bishop among many bishops in the Orthodox Church. And that the way that they used to decide theological disagreements was actually have ecumenical councils. And guess what? The Pope did not decide what the decision of that ecumenical council was. He got one vote, just the same as every other bishop. He wasn't more powerful, and he did not speak ex cathedra. I think that's the term.
Okay, multiple terms. Ecumenical council, there was like 5 leaders of the different major churches in the very early parts of Christianity that made decisions for all of Christianity together, right? That's what the councils were.
Right, so these bishops are like the heads of different churches, and they would come together on theological discussions, and if there was something to be discussed, some heresy to be excommunicated, they would come together and decide upon that. And there's nothing like that in the Protestant church. There's no way to actually determine what is true for the rest of the church. So that was pretty much the major reason I started looking into Orthodoxy.
Okay, so Joe, do you have any questions kind of based on that lowdown?
No. And the funny thing is, if I was inside religion, I would totally side with Casey on this. Because if someone tells me right now that something is something and I'm 100% convinced that it's not the right thing or that I'm right, I will stop following this person. A good example is we once went on a camping trip and we had to walk back, and everyone was like, no, we need to go right. Even the camp leaders were going right. And I'm like, no, if we go left and we go through this impasse, we're there already. And they walked for an extra hour, and I just sat there at the campsite like, hey, how was the walk, guys? Because I would left. But same with this. If a priest would tell me, or anyone would tell me a certain story, and I'm like, but what if? And they tell me, no, there is no what if, then I'm done.
Yeah.
So I totally understand that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so Case, what has that ultimately led you to? Well, so yeah, what drew you to the Orthodox Church?
Well, so that was what drew me. Since then, I've also realized that the Orthodox Church offers things that I've just seen strangely absent from Protestant church. It's not the thing that drew me, but it's just been a weird like observation. Like, for example, confession. Confession is such a good thing. I have never heard even any reason. People, like when I ask Protestants why there's no confession in Protestant churches, they don't give me like the reason. They're just like, oh, well, we never even thought about that. Oh, we just didn't know that was a thing. And it's like, how do you actually deal with the fact that you have inauthenticity in your life? I needed someone to walk me through that and walk to become a more genuine person. Mm-hmm. There's actually supposed to be people, not people who are closer to, like, who are priests between you and God, but people who are like seen as like role models, people who are seen as like wise, who walk you through that. Mm-hmm. And that's generally what a priest in the Orthodox Church is someone who has been elevated by the community as someone who can help you. And like confession and saying, hey, I'm struggling with this, can you help me walk through it? Seems like the most natural thing in the world. Why the hell does that not exist in the Protestant church? It's, again, stupid, and I don't care to be a part of stupid things.
Wait, okay, I have a thought on that. So I totally hear you, and I think that's a really good point. And I was actually just reading a book about Bonhoeffer, a German pastor in World War II who fought against the Nazis. And he talks about that, how he's like, a confessor is a really necessary role. But within Protestantism, it's not this codified hierarchical church structure where you have to go to the priest to confess, but the role of confessor comes from each other, from fellow members of the body of Christ, other believers. And I've experienced this in that different seasons, brothers have been confessors, close friends have been confessors, mentors have been confessors. And out here, I'm currently part of a group of pastors that meet on a weekly basis, and we're confessors with each other.
Can I interrupt that real quick? You can do that in the Orthodox Church. You can confess to other Orthodox people. There's not like any kind of like thing saying you can't do that.
Well, I guess maybe my only perception is from the Catholic Church with the whole weird veil thing, and you sit there and you can't see each other, but then you're like, Father, I've done all these horrible things.
Well, the Orthodox confession's different than the Catholic, but there's no veil or anything like that. But even in like the penances and stuff, it's different. In the Orthodox Church, literally what it is they're trying to help you. Like you're saying, I'm struggling. Like, if you needed therapy, right? If you needed therapy, would you go to and just be like some guy on the street or just some friend? Like you would want someone who's trained in therapy.
Totally,
right?
Totally. And often within Protestant churches, they do like a call to prayer. So with it, after the church sermon or whatever, they might have a moment where it's like, hey, if you have things that you want prayed for, these elders or the pastor or these people who are trained in praying and ministering in that way, you can come talk to them. So it's not completely pulled from Protestantism. It's moved into some different realms, but I think it's mostly a reaction off of the whole Catholic veil thing. Like, that it has to be a priest and it has to be in this box and done this way. And I do think that's a worthwhile maneuver, a worthwhile change, so we keep confession. So it's not just private confession. And this is what Bonhoeffer said. We can't just rely on private confession between you and God. There has to be another person that creates the healing that's needed there. 1 John says, confess your sins to one another so that you may be healed. Anyway, but it's a bit unfair to say that they've fully thrown it out. It's still there. It's just in different ways.
Okay. Just to push back a little bit, you have to have some structure to it because it's actually dangerous to allow people to put their influence in your life when they don't have the training and the wisdom to actually speak into those areas. Like if you're dealing with, like, let's say something like alcoholism. I'm taking this away from the church for a second. If you're dealing with something like alcoholism and you just go to one of your friends and they give you bad advice and you really internalize that, that's going to be detrimental. Like, you should go to someone who has some kind of training, some kind of like authority to speak into your life on these matters. Like it can't just be any random person.
For sure. But then that structure also has created a whole host of abuses due to that power being in one person. Again, I can only point to the Catholic Church because I don't know about abuses in the Orthodox Church, if that's been a thing, is a thing. But the priesthood of the Catholic Church has been a cesspool for because of that whole structure that you're just talking about.
Well, but be careful, because you probably have Catholics listening in on this podcast. I want to say, like, I don't have firsthand experience with Catholic confession. I bet a lot of it's actually really beneficial. My point is, the Protestants have thrown the baby out with the bathwater. Yeah. They don't have structured confession. It doesn't exist. Not in my experience.
Okay, we'll pull back from the weeds. Joy, this is good though. I mean, this is going to be this is the reality that as we jump into a podcast where we're interviewing Christians, non-Christians, maybe we get a Buddhist on here and we can go like knee deep into theology of Buddhism. Like I would love that. So we're going to have part of our audience that are like really vibing with everything we're talking about. And they're like, wow, that's really fascinating. And then some other people are like, no idea what they're talking about. So actually, Joey, why don't we just take a kind of a moment? I'm curious to see interactions that you might even have with Casey, things that you're curious about, or perspectives that you found interesting or would push back on, or things like that.
No, it's actually really funny, because as someone that's totally distant from any type of religion, and then finding someone that's actually thinking wise on such a same level is very interesting to me. Because if I was in the same position as Casey, I think I would walk close to the same path. I feel like that after hearing your story, after hearing the things you do, that is the thing that I would do. Maybe some different things, because I'm still a non-believer who loves worldly pleasures way too much. Because my joke before, like saying goodbye to that college orgy, well, I would probably be like, man, this is gonna be awkward, but we're in. Yep. So, but not necessarily questions, because I feel like it really depends on what you've experienced yourself. Like Casey said, is that he doesn't have any experience with the other confession, so he can't speak out on that. And I think that's a good thing. If you don't have experience, don't talk about it.
For sure.
I feel like we might get some feedback from people that had some confessions done, and that they feel like, oh, but they do have specialized people. And I feel like for your example, Scott, that it has to be multiple people indeed, not just one, because there is that room for abuse of power, but we can't say for sure if that's happening. I mean, your example from the Catholic Church, yeah, it's a good example, but it's also a dangerous example, because it's been in the news, it's been everywhere, and sure, it happens, but we can't say it happens everywhere.
For sure. And what I'm commenting not necessarily is an attack on Catholicism, but more on what you're putting forward, Case, the cementing of this structural idea that the confession only looks this way, and it's always priest who kind of has all the answers and people who have none of the answers. And I don't know that, and maybe it's just the Protestant bias in me, but I rub up against that. Also, it's a question of capacity. The pastor or priest, there's no way that he can counsel everyone. He's only one dude. So I really believe in like empowering all believers to, as they follow Christ, help others do the same. That's like totally what I'm doing as a navigator. So I don't know. I think I see what you're saying. There's things that priests or pastors have the abilities to do, but to go to them for every little sin or little thing you're struggling with just doesn't make sense.
Well, and in the Orthodox Church, there's also elders. It's not like a position. They can't, like, it's not like a clergy position, but they're just people that are recognized as being wise, as being, people you can talk to. And a lot of them, and that's encouraged, is go talk with them, go, have that interaction. You get wisdom from the people that, have been proven to be wise. But it's kind of like the old image of when you want wisdom in your life, where do you go? You climb to the top of the mountain. There's an old man sitting there cross-legged with a big long beard. Why is that a compelling image? Why does that stick with us? I actually think that sticks with us because, it's not just your drinking buddy that has the answer you need. Sometimes you got to go to someone who is actually accomplished something as far as spiritual awakening.
Fair. Okay. So Case, what would your advice be? I think I've even asked this question before. You always get me in such a little mind tizzle in my little brain, and I just get so mad. What is your advice for Protestants? Pack up, leave, get out now. Integrate these ideas from Orthodoxy into your thinking. It's just one choice. You've made yours.
There's nothing I can do as far as help with the truth aspect, because all Protestant churches preach different things. So you're never going to have that aspect. You can only get that from either, I guess, Catholicism or the Orthodox Church. And I gave my reasons why I didn't think Catholicism worked that great. But communion or confession, you could ask your pastor for that and say, hey, and encourage everyone else in the congregation to start doing it. Your pastor is going to hate you. He's going to now I'm meeting with all these people. They're all doing their confessions. Well, now you're starting to earn their pay. So that's their job. So I think that would be one thing. If truly you felt as a Protestant there's something to be learned from another faith, then I would say, encourage your pastor to actually do confessions for people. Walk people through their struggles.
I think the pastors do, but fair. Good thought.
Add some structure to it, like a regular thing. You meet with them once a month.
How often do you meet with your priest, Case?
I'm a catechumen. I'm not in the Orthodox. I'm entering the Orthodox Church. So
does that mean you don't have confession in your life right now?
Well, we meet with him every 2 weeks, but confession in the Orthodox Church is actually a sacrament. So as a spiritual aspect, it's something that you do when you're a part of the church. But we do meet with him and we tell him what's going on with our lives. And so I guess it's similar thing where we're gaining his wisdom and stuff, but the actual sacrament is something done within the church. So we'll get there, I suppose.
Fascinating. Okay. So any other advice for Protestants? Because the majority of our listeners.
You know what? Very broad, Scott. Very narrow-minded. Any life advice for anyone?
Fair. Well, yeah. I mean, I wanted to tie this. See if Casey would. I don't even know. Same.
I guess my advice is where does your theology sit in the grand scheme of church history? That might be a good place to start. Do you believe something that 90% of Christians across space and time have believed, or are you just thinking something completely off the wall? If so, for me, that would feel kind of lonely and vulnerable. I like the fact that the things I believe are actually the things that the majority of Christians have believed across time and space. I'm not some crazy weirdo. These are just the general things that Christians have believed. If you want to be if you want to be a Buddhist, my suggestion is find out what the majority of Buddhists have believed across time and space and believe that. If not, don't call yourself a Buddhist. You're not. And if you want to be a Hinduist, find out or a Muslim, find out what the majority of Muslims have believed across time and space, and then call yourself a Muslim. I just don't see how you can just come up with your own ideas and then call it the same name.
I like it.
And then, Case, any advice for Joey?
Well, I don't know if I know Joey well enough. It would be I can tell that you like looking things up, and that's my favorite kind of person, because I like pushback. Like I like it when I make a claim. I'm the kind of person who makes lots of claims, obviously.
A lot of claims.
I like trying to trigger people because
I'm triggered.
I've noticed by triggering people, they go look things up, which is my main goal. I just want them to educate themselves. I actually don't care what they come to believe. I just don't like uneducated people. So my thing is like, if I can annoy people on this podcast, or if I can trigger them, or if I can make them feel that I'm an arrogant prick, and it gets them to go look things up for themselves, then I did what I came to do.
That's why I love the second part, because I've never even seen Scott even slightly irritated or anything, and he's on edge.
This makes me so mad sometimes. So mad.
But thank you. No, I totally agree. I love to be educated on everything if possible. I'm not one to follow someone blindly. If it's a teacher, then I might do that. But even if it's a teacher, I'm still inclined to look up what they said to either add to the information or see if they're right, because you can't follow someone blindly.
Yeah, and also like if anyone listening to this wants to hit me up and like tell me how I'm wrong, I love those conversations. So I don't get enough of it actually. I feel like most of the time people just pitters out. Like I say something and I don't get any response. So I started trying to just say things a little more aggressively, just so I can get some engagement in life. It gets boring otherwise.
Oh shit! I've totally been doing the same, but in regular conversations. Normally I'm very passive aggressive, and I'm like, "Hey, by the way, good night," and just go. And I'm like, "Hey, you're not responding to my shit, so I'm just calling you out right now. Respond."
Yep, totally.
Yeah, sometimes that works better.
I found so. I mean, I think people like a little spice to life, so I don't think. As long because I don't make personal character attacks. I'm just challenging people's ideas in a spicy way, but I think people actually like that. I think, and the truth is, if someone does come back at me with some stuff, I'm actually really open. You'll find that I actually am listening, and if I haven't read it before, I'm like, oh, dude, thank you for going out and adding to my well of knowledge. My base of understanding is now larger because you went out and did some research and challenged me, and awesome.
So Case, I'm curious, as we've walked through your story, where are you at now? What are some things that you're looking into? I guess struggling with your faith, if you want to go there, doubting, but yeah, what are some things, what is God currently working on in your life, or what are you currently developing? And then we'll go with Joey's last favorite question. We'll end with that.
I mean, I haven't been struggling with as much with like I don't think doubt has been a huge element of my life. But I think as far as things I'm kind of into right now, because I do just go through phases of being really into things, and then I dive really deep and then eventually find something else. Right now I'm reading through Boethius, Consolation of Philosophy, and I've read through it twice. Well, I listened to it first and then I've read through it. It's an interesting book in that every major leader in the West has read it at a crisis moment of their life when they thought everything was going to be lost. And from King Alfred the Great to Elizabeth the First, I think, Elizabeth the Great, Elizabeth the Glorious, I think it was. But anyway, they read this book because it actually helped them navigate the dark despair of the existential loss of everything. And so I've been reading through. It is dense. It is hard to get through. It is not an easy read. It's probably one of the hardest things to read and actually like get what he's trying to say. But what I've been doing is I first went through and highlighted what I thought were seminal thoughts, and then I went back, and now I'm like rewriting it in my own words because that helps me process. But I'm doing it in short little sentences for each chapter, so I can get the broad scope of what his argument is. And so that's kind of like my little thing right now. It's part of a larger journey of trying to understand King Alfred the Great and his overwhelming trial with the Viking hordes in the golden age of the Vikings, when they came down to destroy all of England. And that was a very important book to him. And so I'm trying to get into his mind and see what he was using to encourage himself during that dark time.
Oh, fascinating. Dang, that's intense. What's the name of it again, Case?
Consolation of Philosophy by Boethius.
In our notes for this episode, it's just going to be a stink ton of references and things that we've talked about.
You've got a job to do to find me every single link.
Yikes. All right, Joey, take us home.
All right, Casey. So my favorite question, if this was your last day, what were your parting words? It doesn't have to be a word. It can be a sentence. It can be a thing. What is your wisdom to this world when you leave it tomorrow?
Like my final words on this planet.
Yeah. You're done. You can't say anything else. You want to leave one teaching to this planet.
Well, definitely, I think the last words that I would say would be, Eva, I love you, would be the last words that I would say. And I think I would spend the last day just kind of like staring into her eyes and like us communing as much as possible. I don't think I would be spending much time thinking about anyone else in the world. They got to deal with it. They got to do what they got to do. Good luck to them. Peace. I don't know if the rest of the world would matter that much to me.
Dude, all this whole story about wanting to live a life with multiple partners. No, man, you're definitely a married man, and you made the right decision.
Yes,
if that's your final day.
I agree. Yeah,
That's
no.
true.
And the thing is, like, with marriage has taught me like so much wisdom in other areas, like as an analogy for God and everything. And yeah, I wouldn't want it any other way, for sure.
Love it.
All right. Well, there we go. There's our part 2. Case, thanks again for being here.
Thanks
Joey,
for having me.
thanks for being here. And you've all been listening to Between Two Worlds, podcast about belief, unbelief, and everything in between. Take care.
Bye.